Threats of invasions have security on high alert, new number one contenders are decided, and a new scandal threatens to rock the university to its core. All of this and more on the latest episode of NXT. Let's dive right in. This is About Last Night on Rumble Rewind. Well, hey, thanks for hanging out for a bit on Rumble Rewind today. Before we dive into all things NXT, do me a quick favor, scroll down below this video, hit that like button for me, and while you're down there, if you're not already, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. We're pushing for our first 200 subscribers, and we're getting closer and closer to that goal. When we get there, we'll be doing the best giveaway in the world, giving away some sweet CM Punk merch. We want you to be eligible, so make sure you are subscribed if you want to stay up to date on all the latest information and never miss an upload from Rumble Rewind. Make sure you turn on those post notifications so that you are in the know. All right, let's dive into this episode. We would open the show in the most dangerous place on earth, the Performance Center parking lot. Ava is out there surrounded by security and referees, saying that there's so much going on that anything could happen, and she stresses the importance of security tonight. She mentions people showing up from Raw or SmackDown, TNA, former talent, the Wyatt Six. All of it has the WWE on high alert. And I gotta tell you, these security guys are gonna be putting in some work tonight. This was definitely a good opener and a good foreshadow for things that were to come. All right, let's start off as we open the show with a tag team turmoil match to determine a new number one contender for Nathan Frazer and Axiom's tag team championships. This match would kick off seeing New Catch Republic taking on Malik Blade and Idris Enofe. The New Catch Republic would win with the Burning Hammer and move on to the next set of competitors, which would be Angel and Berto from LDF. Apollo Crews would show up in the midst of this to distract Angel and Berto, allowing Tyler Bate to get the win with the Tyler Driver 97 and move on to face the next set of competitors, the Good Brothers. In this round, the New Catch Republic would get the sneaky win off of a leverage pin by Pete Dunne over Carl Anderson. Now, after the OC was eliminated, Out the Mud's Bronco Nima and Lucian Price would come to ringside to kind of get in their faces, and they would wander off to the back. More on that later. Now, in the final round, the New Catch Republic would face off against Chase U's Andre Chase and Duke Hudson. There's a pretty cool spot in this where Chase threw up the U, and Pete Dunne jumped up off the mat and basically almost ripped his fingers off. There was also an interesting stare down at one point between Ridge Holland and Pete Dunne. As you know, those two used to be in the Brawling Brutes together, and that story never really ended. It just sort of disappeared. So it was cool to kind of see them acknowledge that a little bit and see some of the drama that would exist between those two. Now, ultimately, Chase U would get the win in this last round after Ridge would push Andre Chase out of the way of a flying Tyler Bate. From there, Andre Chase goes up to the top rope, hits the crossbody, and picks up the win for the U to become number one contenders for the tag team championships. Now, a little later in another backstage segment, we would see a conversation between Duke Hudson and Ridge Holland. A production assistant would show up and tell Duke that he has the photos from his match last week that he requested. These photos would show that Ridge interfered in last week's match. However, Ridge tries to talk Duke out of looking at the photos, saying, "You won, don't worry about it." Before Duke can open the envelope, the rest of Chase U runs in, continuing to celebrate their win, and Ridge uses this distraction to grab the photos away from Duke. As the segment ends, there is an interesting stare down between Duke and Ridge. I think this is a very interesting story that they're playing out with Chase U. I think it's possible that Nathan Frazer and Axiom drop the titles at Heatwave. We'll talk about that a little later. So I could see Chase U winning them, only to later find out that this run that was started with a tainted victory. This could lead to kind of a lack of confidence from Chase and Duke, or even a cheating scandal that could become a rumor buzzing around backstage, right? I do like it from a Chase U standpoint, as they are a university. I think it could make a lot of sense. However, from a WWE standpoint, I don't know that it really fits. The reason I say this is because people win through underhanded means all the time. There are no asterisks next to championship title reigns. There are no asterisks really on wins and losses. And so I don't think it really fits. So I hope this story doesn't end up in a university stripped of championship amidst rumors of cheating scandal. I think that would be kind of odd in the WWE, but I do kind of like it as Chase U is a university, so it kind of makes sense. So I'm a little torn on where I want to see this story go and how I want to see it play out. But tell me what you think. How do you feel about the Chase U angle right now? Where would you go with this, especially as we've seen kind of this idea of these photos could surface at any time. How would you book that? For me, I think it goes more in the loss of confidence than I do see it going into a university scandal, but who knows? We'll see. All right, let's stick with the tag team scene for a moment. And as I mentioned in the tag team turmoil match, OTM would show up to taunt the OC after their elimination. Now, a little bit later in the night, cameras would cut to the backstage area where the Good Brothers stood over a fallen OTM with chairs. Bronco, Nemo, Lucian Price absolutely laid out. At this point, Jada Parker runs into the scene, begins to get in the face of Gallows and Anderson, but this brings Mi Chen in and she attacks Jada Parker. Security, again, getting their work in tonight, finally steps in to separate the groups. A bit later, Jada Parker would interrupt Kelly Kincaid's interview with Kalani Jordan regarding the upcoming #1 contenders match between Sol Ruca and Ariana Grace. Parker said that if Mi Chen wants to blindside her after what the OC did to Bronco and Lucian, then she could see her face-to-face next week in a street fight. But this face right here, though, from Kelly Kincaid after the interruption is just the best. Anyway, let's talk about Jada Parker for a second. She is a natural on camera. Jada Parker is so good. Her promo work is next level. Please, let's give this woman more camera time. Seriously, I know she's still a bit green in the ring, but I cannot wait for her first title run, and I really hope to see her with that Women's North American Championship sooner than later. She really does continue to impress in every opportunity that she has to be on camera. Her feuding with Mi Chen has been absolutely awesome. Their in-ring work has been really, really good, and I know that Mi Chen's going to continue to help her improve in the ring very quickly. As far as the OC, though, I still don't really know what's going on with them. I know I've said in the past that I want to see them go back to SmackDown and stay there, but now that the Styles and Cody Rhodes feud is kind of concluded, AJ's not really in a program right now, I don't know what to do with them. I think they're doing a great job of helping elevate some of the younger talent on NXT, and so I could actually see them sticking around for a little bit longer. I also really wouldn't mind seeing Mi Chen become more of a permanent fixture on NXT. Maybe she leaves the OC eventually. She does elevate the division and she provides consistent quality in-ring work and quality stories with these younger performers. So I'm here for it. I don't know where to go with the OC, but I do think that they're doing great work on NXT that I am enjoying. But let's stick with the Women's North American Championship. Like I said, we would get this #1 contenders match, and that is between Ariana Grace and Sol Ruca. This was set up last week by Ava and Kalani, and there's no surprises here. Sol Ruca wins in fairly dominant fashion with the Soul Snatcher. This does make it official, though. It will be Sol versus Kalani for the Women's North American Championship at Heatwave. Now, after the match, Kalani would come down to ringside to congratulate Sol on the win. She'd raise her hand, and Sol would eye the North American Championship the entire time. I love it. I love the look. I love the psychology. It's just really well done. Now, a little later, backstage, we'd see Kalani and Sol talking again and wishing each other good luck in the match. As they walked off, JC Jane and Jasmine Nix enter the scene and kind of talk about how the whole conversation makes them want to throw up. Fallon Henley would enter the scene to agree with them, and the three of them would kind of talk about how angry they are. They would complain about being overlooked time and time again, despite being there for years. JC finally says, maybe we should do something about it, and Fallon says, maybe we should. Again, it's not surprising that Sol got the win here, and I'm really looking forward to the match. I think that Kalani and Sol are going to put on a great show at Heatwave. It's going to be a good competitive match, and I'm excited to see where they go with it. I think probably Kalani retains just because the title's so fresh and so new, but you never know. NXT does move the titles around a good bit, and it could go to Sol for a little while. We'll see what happens. Now, I also really do like this group that's sort of forming with JC, Jasmine, and Fallon Henley. I think the three of them fit well together. JC and Fallon's kind of angry veterans vibe is working, and I do like it. I would love to see them continue to help elevate some of the newer talent, such as Jasmine Nix, but I would maybe even add in Izzy Dame to that group, and the four of them could sort of be this different but still sort of reincarnation of Toxic Attraction. I think it could be fun. Maybe JC's leading it, maybe Fallon's leading it, who knows? But again, I think Izzy Dame would be a good add to that mix. Speaking of Izzy Dame, she would confront Brynlee Reese in a backstage segment, saying that she was actually standing in the way of Malik and Idris being successful. She said that the positivity thing that Brynlee's doing doesn't really help anybody. Now, in this segment, if you look over their shoulders, though, you can see that Tatum Paxley is watching on. I don't know what's going on here. I do enjoy Tatum Paxley. I enjoy the work that she's doing, this kind of weird, creepy, stalker type stuff. I like it. I think it's fun, but I want to see something more out of her. I want to see a feud, and if it's with Izzy Dame, I wouldn't mind that at all. I think that they would do a great job, and so if that's where this thing is headed, to a Izzy versus Tatum Paxley feud, I would love to see that. Sticking with the women's division, though, we would see a backstage segment in the locker room with several of NXT's developmental talents watching highlights of last week's post-match conflict between Roxanne Perez and Lola Vice. Roxanne would appear and get into the face of Carmen Petrovic. Roxanne says that maybe one day Carmen will be on her level, and Carmen should just go back to watching the actual stars. Carmen says to Roxanne that she'll prove tonight that she's already there. So later in the evening, we get a match between Roxanne and Carmen, but before the match started, Lola Vice would make her entrance and sit in on commentary, simply stating that she wanted to watch Roxanne's match. Carmen did get in a good amount of offense here, and the two of them put on a great match. Eventually, though, Roxanne would win. She hit Carmen with a kick to the stomach and followed it up with pop rocks to get the pinfall. After the match is where the real story happened, though. Lola Vice would enter the ring, get into Roxanne's face. Roxanne attempted to hit Lola, but Lola blocked it and countered with the spinning back fist to lay Roxanne out. Lola would pick up the women's title and pose with it for a bit before she would leave with it and head to the back. Now, a little later in the evening, Ava is in her office talking to Carly Bright and Kendall Gray. Ava tells Carly that she would get her match with Wendy Chu next week after what happened on last week's episode. Ava here, of course, is referring to Wendy Chu attacking Kendall Gray and knocking her out. And unfortunately for Carly, I think she's taking a nice long nap at the hands of Wendy Chu next week. But as Bright and Gray leave the office, Lola Vice would enter the scene and drop the women's title on Ava's desk. Lola says when your champion wakes up, you can return this to her and tell her I want a match for the title at Heatwave. A little while later, of course, Roxanne would storm into Ava's office and throw a pretty epic tantrum. Ava says she had nothing to do with any of this, but Roxanne could get her revenge when she defends her championship against Lola Vice at Heatwave. At this point, Roxanne continues her tantrum and says, "This is a lot of fun for you, isn't it, Ava?" After she storms out, Ava said, "Yeah, actually, it is." Now, this has been a good feud so far. I know I talk about heel versus heel sometimes and face versus face and how sometimes that doesn't work. But in the heel versus heel realm of things, it really can. It works well, especially because often the heel characters are about themselves, so they don't really care about alignment, they just care about winning. And that is Lola Vice's character. She doesn't care who she has to go through, she just cares about winning. And Roxanne, in the same way, doesn't care who her opponent is, she just cares about hanging on to that NXT Women's Championship. I do think that Roxanne's character is continuing to develop really well here, and I think she's getting closer and closer to being main roster ready every day. She is a great NXT Women's Champion. I'm really enjoying her title run, and I think that this feud with Lola Vice has been really, really good. I could see Roxanne getting some sort of underhanded win at Heatwave, hanging on to the title, and then Lola having a case to get a rematch, and maybe down the road Lola gets her hands on the belt. I don't think she's quite there yet, but I do think that this is going to be a great match, and it's going to continue to develop Lola Vice to help her become more championship ready. Moving on, let's talk about Metaphor for a second. Backstage, we would see Jakara Jackson, Lash Legend, and Oro Mensah on a video call with Noam Dar, who confirms he is in fact injured and will be out of action for a considerable amount of time. At this point, he does thank Oro for having his back and says he can't wait to be back with them as soon as possible. Oro responds and really just thanks Noam Dar for bringing him into the group. He said he never expected to find a place where he fit in at all, much less find true friendship like he has in Metaphor. Oro would go on to talk about his childhood and his history and kind of a longer segment that was really good to get to know Oro Mensah a little bit. But he does say that he is going to get his revenge on Ethan Page for what he did to Noam. Good stuff from Metaphor here. I'm wondering if they're trying to move them more in a face direction. As I've said before, there are not quite enough faces, especially in the women's division, to fill out the top of the card. So this could go a long way to help transition Metaphor into a face faction. I don't know how that's going to work, but we'll see. Right now, Oro's doing great stuff on screen, and he's really underrated in the ring. Lash Legend, of course, is phenomenal, and so both of them could really help boost the division. But we'll just have to see where it goes. Wishing Noam Dar a speedy recovery, though. Can't wait to see him back in the ring I really enjoy his work, so hopefully it's not a super long injury or a super long time before we get him back. Speaking of factions and groups, we would get a match between Tavian Heights and Damon Kemp. This match was set up last week when Charlie Dempsey invited Tavian to join the NQCC and said that if he could beat Damon Kemp, then he was in. Heights would pick up the win over Kemp here with his high belly-to-belly suplex. After the match, Tavian would celebrate with Charlie Dempsey and a skeptical Miles Bourne. All the while, Damon Kemp kind of looked frustrated and maybe even a little bit confused as to why they wanted Tavian in the group. I think it makes a lot of sense to add Tavian Heights to this group. He fits in really well. He has been playing pretty face lately, though, especially if you watch his Level Up stuff and his entrance into NXT. So I'll be curious to see how that translates as he becomes part of the No Quarter Catch crew. Will he turn heel, or will his time with them be short-lived as he realizes it's not a good fit? We'll have to see, but all of those are strong possibilities. Tell me what you think about Damon Kemp's character at this point. Tell me what you think about the No Quarter Catch crew, and how do you feel about Charlie Dempsey being the leader of it? Let me know your thoughts on all of this. I'm very curious as where this story goes. Moving on, we would get a backstage segment with Stevie Turner talking to Robert Stone. Now, this has been interesting as both of them have sort of gravitated towards Ava and kind of become assistant GMs in a way. They kind of argue, though, back and forth about which one of them has helped Ava more in her role, and Stevie basically calls herself a snitch. So apparently we've got this competition to be Ava's assistant. So I'm really curious to see what happens with Stevie Turner here, especially as she is an in-ring competitor. Robert Stone does seem to be moving to more of a management kind of role, which I think fits him well, but Stevie to me is confusing. I think she is really good in the ring and she's got a lot to offer, so hopefully that's the direction that we're headed in some way. All right, moving on, a couple more things of note. First off, we get a match between Joe Coffey and Wes Lee. This match came about after Coffey was angry last week that Wes Lee was getting another shot at the North American Championship. Now, late in the match, Coffey would go for a superplex, but Wes Lee would fight him off. Coffey would then go for his spinning lariat, but Lee would dodge it and counter with the cardiac kick to get the win. Afterwards, Obafemi came to the Crow's Nest to congratulate Lee and said he'll see him at Heatwave for their first and final one-on-one match for the title. As we know, Wes Lee is challenging Obafemi at Heatwave, and if Wes doesn't win, he is not allowed to challenge Obafemi again. This has been a pretty popular stipulation lately. As we know, Seth Rollins just made the same agreement with Damian Priest last night on Monday Night Raw, and if you didn't see that one, check out this video right here. We'll tell you all about it, but these kind of stipulations can really change the future for a champion or a contender. If Wes Lee is not able to challenge Obafemi again, then that means that he's got to move up the card or into the tag team division, or just kind of wait until Femi loses the title. So I'm curious to see what happens. One way or another, I think one of these two competitors is moving towards the NXT Men's Championship scene, and I'm torn as to which one it is. It seems to me like it should be Wes Lee. Obafemi's doing a great job with the North American Championship. He's doing a great job developing as an in-ring competitor. Let's let him keep that for a little while. And that would free up Wes Lee to move towards the top of the card and fill out the roster and the division for the Men's NXT Championship. I see that as a win all around. So my thought is Femi retains, Wes Lee moves into a different direction. All right, coming back to Nathan Frazier and Axiom and the NXT Tag Team Championships. Last week, it was made official that Nathan Frazier would get a shot at the Heritage Cup versus Tony D'Angelo tonight on this episode. Now, at first, Axiom was frustrated, saying that Nathan Frazier needed to focus. So we would see a backstage segment in which Dante Chen said, "I know you have a tag team partner, but if you need a corner man tonight, I'll be there for you." Before this conversation can conclude, Axiom enters the scene and says he's been thinking a lot about it and he is going to show up for Nathan tonight. So he does still think that he needs to focus on where they're at, but he supports him. Nathan gets super excited and Dante bows out gracefully. A little while later, Tony D would be interviewed by Sarah Schreiber. He said that his biggest concern right now was what kind of after party they were going to have. He then said, all joking aside, Nathan Frazier is super fast. He's very experienced in these types of matches, and it's going to be a tough challenge for him. He said, but no matter what happens tonight, the cup stays in the family. This match would follow, and in round one, Frazier gets a quick roll-up and a surprise pinfall in only 40 seconds. Tony D would even things up in round two, though, before we would have two more rounds of draws. In round 5, Nathan Frazer wraps it up by hitting the Phoenix Splash, going for the pin, but before he could get the pinfall, the round ended. Tony D was saved by the bell. In the final round, Tony D would get the win with the Sky High Spinebuster. I like Tony D as the champion. I think this makes a lot of sense. He's doing a great job, and it's really continuing to build up Tony D. Later in the night, we would get another backstage segment between Nathan Frazer and Axiom. Axiom said he's really sorry that it didn't go his way, but he is glad that now they can focus. Frazer said he's absolutely right. He's all in for their tag team title match as soon as he gets past his WWE Speed match today. Axiom again appears a little frustrated as we move on. Now, as the segment closed though, Nathan Frazer mentioned having to get checked out by medical. And this is what my theory was last week as we talked about this. I think that between this match and whatever happens on Speed, that Nathan Frazer is going to have some kind of small injury that is going to prevent him from being his best in the tag team title match at Heatwave. I think that this is going to lead to Nathan Frazer and Axiom dropping the tag team titles now, of course, to Chase U, who we know is the #1 contenders. But where we go from here is in question. Is this the breakup? Does this break up Nathan Frazer and Axiom as a team? Or does it galvanize them? Does it make them realize that they do need to focus and then they go on a quest to get their titles back? Either way, I think it's good. I think both of those guys can stand alone. Both of those guys can really help fill out the Heritage Cup division if they want to do that. But tell me what you think. What would you do with the tag team titles, and what would you do with Nathan Frazer and Axiom? To keep them together, or you split them up? Throw your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to interact with those. Let's talk about the main event. This story kind of spanned the entire night. Early in the night, we would see Ethan Page in the ring cutting a promo saying he wants to be made the #1 contender as he beat Javon and he never got eliminated from the Battle Royal. Ava comes to the ring and she tells Ethan Page not to test her, but he does have a point. As the two of them are talking, Shawn Spears comes to the ring and he says that he also beat Javon, so he should be the #1 contender. Trick Williams then comes to the ring and says he'll fight all of them if he has to. The heels attack Trick and this brings Javon to the ring. The faces clear the ring and Ava's extra security shows up a little late to restore order. Again, there they are, one more time. Now, at the end of this, Javon does take a glance over towards the championship. Backstage a little later, Javon and Trick are having a conversation about the earlier events, and Javon offers to have Trick's back as he takes on Shawn Spears later in the night. Trick declines and says that Evans needs to lock in for their match at Heatwave, and Trick also confesses that he has some trust issues because of the championship. He said he's seen that title make people do some crazy things. Of course, I assume he's talking about Carmelo, but, we've seen some other stuff as well in Trick's reign. Javon does say that he respects it, and he tells Trick to go out there and whoop that Trick. Javon does take one more glance at the title before Trick walks out. Now, in the match that would take place later in the night, Trick would go one-on-one with Shawn Spears. Ethan Page would once again join commentary to watch the match. During the match, Oro Mensah would once again attack Ethan Page, and security would eventually remove them both from the arena. Later in the match, though, we would see security once again attempting to remove someone from the ringside area. Now, the cameras did their best to not show who it was, but it turned out to be Brooks Jensen. Now, in this conflict, Jensen would spill Vic's candy bowl, first of all, drawing a major reaction from the crowd, and then would remove the cover from the announce table and seemingly inadvertently hit Trick Williams in the head with it. This allowed Spears to return Trick to the ring, hit him with the C4, and get the surprising win. I don't know when the last time we've seen Trick Williams pin was, but I did not expect for Shawn Spears to win this match at all. It was shocking. I couldn't believe it. I like the way they did it. Obviously, they protected Trick with the angle, but it was still a shocking win for Shawn Spears. Now, after the match concluded, but before the show went off the air, the cameras would cut to Ava's office, where Stevie Turner, and Robert Stone would discuss what they should do. Ava said that Page, Spears, and Evans all have legitimate claims at the #1 contender spot. She said, and I quote, "Brandon from the Rumble Rewind channel is absolutely right. We should make this thing a fatal 4-way. Now, that's a loose quote, but I mean, it's pretty close to what she said. And so, thanks to my suggestion, we get a fatal 4-way at Heatwave. Trick Williams defends his championship against Ethan Page, Javon Evans, and Shawn Spears. Now, this is a great way to get the belt off of Trick if they want to, but his title run is still pretty fresh. If they want to make Ethan Page the champion for a little while, they could do that by having someone else get pinned, obviously. They could put it on Shawn Spears if they wanted to. I'd be shocked if that happened. I would be shocked if Javon Evans gets it. Honestly, I believe that either Ethan Page or Trick Williams is walking out of Heatwave as the champion, and I'm just not 100% sure yet. But tell me your thoughts. Who do you think picks up this win? Who do you think will be the NXT champion after Heatwave? Now, we do have one more episode of NXT prior to in the go-home week, so things could still change. Something could happen. Somebody could get taken out. Who knows? But I am excited about Heatwave. The card is shaping up really nicely. We're going to get some great matches, some great competition, and some great storytelling. This, of course, is the day after Money in the Bank, so we're looking at a pretty stacked weekend of wrestling, and I cannot wait. We, of course, will be here with reviews and reactions and all of that stuff as it happens, and I hope that you will join us for it. Well, that is it for today. Thanks once again for hanging out with me for a little bit on the Rumble Rewind channel. Hey, if you're still here, it seems like you really liked the video, so I'd love for you to let me know that by scrolling down below and just hitting that like button. While you're there, go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Like I said, we're pushing for our first goal of 200 subscribers, and when we get there, we're going to get to give away some sweet CM Punk merchandise, and I want you to be eligible for that. So the only way to be eligible is to make sure you are subscribed. And if you want to stay up to date on all the latest information regarding that and make sure you never miss an upload from Rumble Rewind, go ahead and turn on those post notifications while you're at it. Well, once again, thank you for hanging out with me for a bit today on Rumble Rewind. We'll see you on the next one.